If you want a surefire way to quickly transform your mental game, you need to develop a personalized alter ego. This strategy is not about putting fixed labels on who you are as a person. Rather, it is about creating a narrative about how you want to show up on the field of play. I'm Dr. Cassie Preston, mental performance coach and founder of CP Mindset. And today I'm going to show you how to transform your mental game with an alter ego. Now, first, I want to give credit to my coach and mentor, Todd Herman, for writing the book, The Alter Ego Effect, and helping bring more simplicity and creativity to the mental game. Unfortunately, most sports psychology strategies are dry, boring, and overcomplicated. As an athlete, you don't want to be on the field of play trying to remember to use positive self-talk, thought stopping, breathing exercises, and reframing situations. These strategies won't get you repeatable and reliable results. Instead, they just give you more things to think about, when what you need to be doing is thinking less. You want to keep it simple and just play your game. Therefore, you need practical and personalized strategies that work for you. That's exactly what you get in our 1-2 punch of the reset routine and alter ego. So here are the 3 steps to creating your personalized alter ego. First, we want to develop a contrast, and that means the narrative on how you don't want to show up and not going to serve you versus your best self, true self, your heroic self, where you're going to play at your best in the zone. Step 2 is now where you start to get creative and playful and personalize it to you to make it click. It's where you start to come up with the name and the story. And then step 3 is where we keep it simple, bring it to life, and map it out. Now, before we dive in, quick reminder to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you're interested in learning more about our mental performance coaching services, you can find out more at cpmindset.com. So the best way to look at step 1 in developing a contrast and how you want to show up versus how you don't want to show up is to think of Superman Clark Kent. This is the example that Todd uses and that I love. And it's who's the real you? And often people think that Clark Kent is the real them and they need to become more confident, need to become this, have these better traits and mentality. But that's a limiting way of looking at it. And the reality is Superman is the true person. It's always there and within you. And then we hold ourselves back and get into this limiting mindset and narrative. The key here is we're not trying to turn you into something you're not. Those heroic traits, the best self traits, if you get into the zone, you can tap into that. That's already within you. And our job is to remove and let go of the traits that you don't want and don't serve you so you can activate and step into that best version of yourself. One of the important parts to developing that contrast is first identifying your key moments of impact. So common examples for an athlete could be before the game, when they're taking the big shot, or the transition to offense, dealing with adversity, creating offense, or playing defense. You don't want to have too many of these. 3 is pretty common, 5 max, because the idea is we want to keep it simple, but we also want to keep it clear on key moments. Now, if you're a racing athlete, this often looks like a race plan. So those key moments could be before the race, the start of the race, that middle section we'll call no man's land or no woman's land. And then there's the prep for the finish and that final stretch. And to be clear, you can use this strategy in other areas of your life as well. It can be very effective. But again, you want to be clear on what those moments of impact are. Now that you've identified those moments of impact, you can go through and you can do this thorough part where you identify the thoughts, feelings, focus, actions, and results in the contrasting narratives and ways you can show up in that key moment. So let's use before the game, which is a common example for athletes, where on that worst self side, they're in their own head. How do they think, feel, focus, act? Well, the thoughts are, it's do or die. All right. So that's kind of like the language that's going on in your head, the self-talk. The feelings, you're getting nervous or worried, and you'd write that down. Your focus is very much on the results and trying to maybe predict as well those results. What's going to happen? You're nervous, you're worried about it. Your actions, you're a lot more tense. You're rushing through. You're not doing breathing exercises. You're very tense the way you move around. You're not loose and having fun. You go and play, it's not so well. Not a great results usually. So it's just painting this picture on one side. This is how I don't want to show up. And you might not always show up that way, but sometimes or a little bit. And so again, we want to create a very clear contrast. So now you fill out on the other side how you do want to show up, your best self, your heroic self that's going to be confident, is courageous out on the field of play. So the thoughts for that might be, it's just a game. Keep perspective, their ability to zoom out. They feel calm, yet ready. They feel relaxed. Their focus is on the process and what they can control. They're let go of the results. Their actions, and maybe they're doing more breathing. They're a little more loose in the way that they prepare and they're having some fun, maybe listening to some music that they like. And the result is, we're going to be a lot more loose, confident, and attacking at the start of that game. So again, this is just a pretty quick general example, but it's a thorough way to kind of start identifying and creating a contrasting narrative and identifying, hey, how do I not want to show up and how do I want to show up in those key moments of impact? So, and just to give you a full example, you would then go through all those moments of impact. And it would look like this. I'll use that goalie example in hockey, but the premise before the game, you want to be relaxed versus being tense. Then in the next moment of impact, like taking a shot against, those are key moments for a goalie. Are they rigid? Are they trying to force themselves to be perfect and make the save? And then you can contrast that with like being calm, trusting themselves and letting it happen. And then after adversity, very common one for athletes. How do I deal with things not going my way, goal against, mistake, coaches getting upset, etc. It's all right, bounce back on the one side. And then on the other side, I might write something like, oh, they get really frustrated, get into a downward spiral. There you have it. You're starting to get a clear picture and contrast for each of those key moments of impact. Now, I showed this picture as a helpful way to just reflect and maybe help you get a balance in the traits and personas and way you want to show up. We've done a lot of these, and so there's some pretty common themes that come up. But do remember, you want to personalize this. There's no two athletes that have the same traits. Think about their mindset, their alter ego in the exact same way. This is just meant to be used as a guide, can help you get identifying those traits quicker and more effectively. So how this works on this side, on the right side here, how do I want to show up? Well, there's this fire and ice way that I like to think about it. And you're always going to want some level of a balance, and it depends on your situation, the moment of impact, or your tendencies as an athlete. Maybe you want to tap in more to the fire, to the attack side versus the relax. But if you have too much fire, you'll burn too hot and you'll lose out on the patience and relaxation, and vice versa. If you're emphasize too much and have too much of the ice and the relaxed and patient, then you're not going to have enough of that competitiveness, relentlessness, and attacking. So there's always some level of balance. And the key is just knowing what traits are the big ones for you. In the middle, we have the love of the game. That's the core, the center. So tapping into that to some degree, as well as on the bottom here, we have this idea of being grounded and centered. And so you can kind of create your performance identity based on and using these traits. And again, personalize it, make it unique for you. And on the flip side, you can see the contrasting ones, being fearful versus tense versus, having a fixed mindset and being too focused on the external scoreboard. All right. So step 2 is now where the magic comes out. One of our most powerful tools is our imagination as humans. And so this is about being creative and tapping into a bit of playfulness and identifying whether it's a superhero, a relative, a famous person, a public figure, or just a name and persona that is creative, unique to you, that pulls out and inspires you. It's going to pull out those traits and narratives we started identifying in step 1. This might seem a little weird, but try it out because it works. And a great example, my mentor, Todd Herman, just did a video and talking about and how he created the Black Mamba with Kobe. So not only is that really cool and pretty legendary, but the video, and there should be a link of that in the blog post here to his actual video about doing it. A key part he talks about is the playfulness, it's the creativeness, and the impact that then can have and transforming your mindset, your mental game is huge. So give this section a try, because this is the difference in having an alter ego that really clicks and works for you versus not. So as you start identifying the person or persona, someone that inspires you and should be able to resemble those traits we talked about, you want to be able to create a story around it. So here's an example using the goalie one again, where let's say they really like Batman. I like using the Batman example. There's a couple good ones in here. And the premise here is, well, for each of those moments of impact, let's identify a story that clicks and has meaning and brings out those traits that he wants or she wants. So the first one here, I use the words standing with the bats. And what does that mean? Well, Batman, a lot of his narrative and story is that he was afraid of bats. He's fearful of them, but he learns to embrace them. It becomes part of his superpowers. He owns and accepts that it's part of his role. So as an athlete, though, and for goalies, that's goals against, or for an athlete making a mistake or things not going your way, you can fear it, or you can learn to embrace them. That's just part of what you signed up for, being a goalie, playing your sport. And so you learn to stand with the bats. And yeah, sometimes the bats are scary, but you don't have to be scared. You can keep moving forward and learn to just own it and make it part of who you are and your identity. And so therefore, before the game is a great time, stand with the bats, not be fearful, worried about it. The great part about this, instead of writing down and focusing on, oh yeah, just be relaxed and excited for the game and not worried about results, We just use the narrative of Stand with the Bats, which has a story and pulls out and evokes that feeling. To finish this example, these are the two other ones I'll use, spreading my wings for a shot against, so making themselves big and trusting themselves just fly into the fight. That's what Batman does. So a good resemblance for their process on shots against. And lastly, when adversity hits, getting back up, climbing out of the hole. One of the movies in the narrative around Batman, he's down deep in a hole. He's going to climb his way out, trust, bounce back, moves forward. Again, you don't have to use a superhero, but superheroes can be pretty fun, cool ones to do. Got lots of that don't use superheroes. And the idea is, as you're starting to create this story and this narrative, you eventually want to summarize it, create a name that personifies it, and you're turning into your own unique, persona. You can even add a tagline to it. So some cool other ones, you can go pretty simple here, like Dark Knight versus the Penguin as two contrasting alter ego names. But you can also get a little more interesting. One of the ones recently did with a Olympic level kayaker, talked about being the lean lion, and her whole persona is about being then her tagline, the elk killer. And she's chasing down her elk and pursuing it as she kayaks. It's fantastic. It pulls out different key moments in her race plan and creates the feelings that she wants as she races. Now, another one I love is a baseball pitcher talks about being the DMV lady. And he goes, next. And so regardless of what happens, it's next. And he's just machine-like attacking each pitch. Tons of other great examples of this. Again, your goal and the premise here is for you to tap in, be creative, playful, find something that clicks for you in both the story and the narrative, as well as now the name and persona. And the last part to be creative around is tapping into a totem, in which Todd talks a lot about. It's the power of clothes cognition, which means when you put something on, you embrace this association with that clothing or item. And so classic examples, you give a kid a Batman costume, they'll become more resilient. You give a kid a lab coat and tell them they're a scientist, and they'll become more diligent. You give them a painter's hat, they'll become more creative. And so what you want to create is an association with that narrative and the story and the alter ego and identity and persona that you're creating. This is a great time to also go back and watch our reset routine, because this is where we tie the 1-2 punch of the reset routine video and concept around acceptance, breathing, and commitment, and activating then your alter ego now with that totem at the end. So lots of unique and different ways to use this concept, but it can be simply like grabbing your favorite piece of equipment as an athlete, putting a little bat on it. If your alter ego is the Dark Knight, little Batman, and you look at that, you tap that to activate that persona. Again, might seem a little bit weird, but look at some of the best athletes in the world. You see the routines and the rituals, and they do things to activate that mental state as they step onto the field of play and show up as their best self. All right, so let's bring it home with step 3 to map it out. And this is where we kind of synthesize it, bring it together, because again, we want this to be very simple. It's unique to you, it's creative, and therefore has this click factor, X factor that brings the concepts, the mindset, the narrative to life for you and keeps it simple. Now, we do want to keep it simple. And so it shouldn't be overcomplicated. You're not creating a map with too many things, but this also helps make it tangible, because now you can see, all right, when I'm in the dressing room, when I'm over in this area, and it's the time, the moment of impact is before the game, that's when I stand with the bats, which we know what that means. It resonates with you because you get that Batman analogy and story. I also like to color code it, as you can see here, a little more blue, calm here, a little more, fighting, attack, confident, yet trusting still at the same time, and relaxed. And for when taking shots against, and then I put his reset routine kind of, when adversity happens, he's doing a loop to the corner. And so this is when he climbs out of the hole and does a reset around bouncing back from adversity. I hope you found that helpful. Please like, subscribe, share. And the 3 keys here to creating your alter ego and transforming your mental game. First, you got to create that contrast. It's breaking it down, thoughts, feelings, actions. How do I not want to show up versus how I do, and what it means for me to be in the zone. And then being creative around the story, the persona, the totem. And then lastly, map it out. That brings it all together, giving you a simple yet powerful, transformative mental game strategy. All right, please reach out if you have any questions. And if you're interested in our one-on-one mental performance coaching services, getting help building your own alter ego and reset routine, and our other strategies, find out more at cpmindset.com.